To my right are members of Legal and Democratic Services, and to my left, planning officers who advise on the applications, and in front of me the councillors who will actually be making the decisions tonight. Before we go any further, excuse me, can I please ask everybody that's got a mobile phone to turn it off or put it on silent or whatever they do, and also to say that nobody can now approach the table. I think that's around 10 minutes. Everybody agree?
Agreed.
These are the 9th of January.
Agreed. I'm understood.
Have you got the February ones or not?
Not yet. Next time.
Madam Chairman, can I suggest to Democratic Services that they do pull their fingers out of it, because these minutes should be produced for the next meeting.
Yes.
So the subcommittee, the minutes of the 9th of February is further clearance process. So apologies to members for the delay.
They exist, but they haven't been created.
Can I suggest that it gets speeded up?
Personal and pecuniary interest, anything? Councillor Cattery.
Thank you, Chair. Item Eruv. The Eruv. I got involved with when the committee asked me to sort of help and facilitate the process to get into the time at the committee stage.
You can stay.
I can say thank you.
Because the Eruv has actually been passed, it's just a question of the final position of a few polls.
Yeah. No, but just declare my interest in
Yeah,
case
okay,
somebody
fine.
raises.
There's no need for you to withdraw.
Yes, sure.
There's no public question time, no members' items. Apologies for absence.
Yes, Madam Chair, I received apologies of absence from Councillor Ian Greenspan and Councillor Graham on substituting for. No substitutes from Councillor Dowie Arich.
And item number 8, 42 Woodstock Road, has been withdrawn by the applicant, so we won't be discussing that tonight. But we'll be taking anything else himself.
Madam Chair, members of the turn to page 79, and the first application is in relation to the Mill Hill Eruv. The application for the Eruv in Mill Hill was actually first on business of the council back in 2009, and was granted planning permission in July 2010. So as such, is this still an external planning permission? So the application before you this evening is for variation to the location of a number of ponds. The Eruv, you can see from the description, involving construction of pole and wide gateways, levy, which can be either 1 metre high posts or canvas, and some supplementary fencing where the existing boundary fencing is not complete. So we'll just run through each individual site. First site here, in front of you there's a large map which has all the site locations on, if you want to familiarise yourself with those. So site 1 is an application for 4 levy rather than the 2 previously approved, which are under the M1 bridge near Ellesmere Avenue, in this location here. Site 2 is Fairway Court in the Fairway. It consists of 4 6-metre high poles in these positions here. These are illustrative photographs. The light green here shows the pole. It won't actually be light green, it'll be Barnet dark green, but it's obviously for clarity in the photograph. And the other 2 here. This application, this application involves changes to the siting of the poles. As you can see from this plan, this was the original location approved 3 years ago. But because of a large tree here, to avoid having to do pruning to that tree, the current proposal is now to resite the pole and span across the road here to create the same boundary, avoiding having to do any work to the tree. Site number 3 spans the A1 Barnet Way. There's some poles into the entrance of the subway here. There's some levy within the subway. There's a pole in the central reservation, another pole over here. with a wire to another pole next to number 86 Barnet Way. This site is identical to the previous approval, other than some additional levees in the central reservation. This is the location of the 4 metre high poles at the entrance of the underpass. Pole on the west side, the east side by the subway, and this is the location of the proposed pole next to 86 Barnet Way. And some levee within this subway as well, which obviously will be visible from outside that site. In fact, in this position, they're going to be disguised as tiles, so they blend in with the existing decor. Site number 4, again, has no change. It's outside Portland School. One pole here on the school side, spanning the road to a 6 metre pole on the other side. Again, this is the photo montage to show the pole outside the property and the one outside the entrance, the pedestrian entrance to the school. Site number 5 is at the top of Bedford Road, joining both Mount Open Space. And it's basically a fence along this boundary here. That's the site photograph. This basically is not considered sufficient to provide an area of boundary. It needs to have some additional fencing placed on it. So this fencing will be attached to that post. Again, this is exactly the same as the previous scheme. The only difference now is a different type of fencing. It's black coloured wire mesh, whereas previously it was this stockwood type fencing that was proposed. Site number 6, which was previously approved in Bedford Road, is no longer required as part of the Eruv application, so has been deleted. And then this takes us now on to the conservation area in Mill Hill, and site 7 at Highwood Hill. Again, this one was approved as part of the original Eruv, spanning from York Lodge here, opposite over the road to next to Highwood Ash. This is the top of Highwood Hill, junction opposite the Rising Sun Pub. And these again photographic representations of the poles. And that's the existing street view, so the poles will be spanning this section of road here. Site number 8 takes us slightly further down Highwood Hill, where there has been a change. The original Eruv proposal was for supplemented fencing down the side boundary with Highwood Hill Cottage. Following discussions with the inhabitants of that property, they weren't very keen to see poles and wire within their hedge because they felt it would affect their maintenance of the hedge. So the current proposal has been amended and now involves 3 4-metre high poles, so they're lower than the ones that would have to span the road, with a connecting wire, so that the owners can maintain their hedge satisfactory. So this is the existing hedge. There'll be 1 pole here, 1 here, and 1 further up near the bus shelter, connected by wire. But as I say, they're only 4 metres high, these poles, as opposed to 6. Site number 9 takes us into the Ridgeway, which is where the main change occurs from the previously approved Eruv. This is the entrance to Belmont Farm. This is Sheepwash Pond. The original proposal, which I'll show you in a moment, was restricted to this side of the Ridgeway, but to avoid having to do works around Sheepwash Pond, the proposal here has been amended. There now be 1 6-metre pole outside the entrance to Belmont Farm, which crosses the road onto this side, outside the open area next to Mill Hill School, just north of the War Memorial. Then there'll be some additional fencing behind the hedging along behind the War Memorial. This is the location, that's Belmont, so the pole will go about here, and the wire will span the road over onto this side. That's an indicative location for the Belmont Farm side, and for the opposite side near the school. And this is the existing fence, the existing hedge, which does have fence behind it in certain areas, and where the fence is missing, it will be supplanted by an additional fence, but it will be behind the hedge. Slightly further down, we then have another pole which goes back onto the other side of the Ridgeway. This one is located outside the school's bicentennial building. We'll cross over the road opposite Cleveland here. So this is the pole location on Cleveland side, and this will be the pole location here, being now posted at this position outside the bicentennial building. Then the third one in the Ridgeway is opposite the exit, the Ventnor exit from Mill Hill School, so it's slightly further down than the other one, and opposite over onto the other side, that side of the master's house. That will be the one on the eastern side of the road, and this is the one outside the school. This pole here with the no entry sign will be removed, and that no entry sign will be put on the Eruv pole to try and reduce the number of poles in that location. So the original Eruv proposal involved 2 6-metre poles outside Mills Close, which is on the north-east side, the entrance to Belmont, or the Belmont side of Mill Hill School. So those are no longer required now, they've been replaced by the new proposal. The original Eruv proposal involved 4-metre poles by the footpath, or sort of the edge of Sheepwash Pond, fencing along the front of Sheepwash Pond, and 6-metre poles the other side. And to avoid damage to trees and any potential impact on wildlife in this area, it was felt it was sensible to try and avoid having to have any poles or any works in the location of the pond, because that is one of the most sensitive parts of the conservation area, and that's the reason for the changes in this location. Site number 10 takes us down to St Vincent's Close. Again, this is the same as the previously approved, 1 pole either side of St Vincent's Lane. This is the existing photograph. And these locations of 2 poles on the highway with the wire across the road. Site 11 is Burton Hole Lane. The ridgeway is up here. This is the section of Burton Hole Lane that splits. And there's the 1 pole on this side of the road next to the research laboratory, and 1 pole on the opposite side of the road. That's the photos, and these have been the locations of the poles. Again, this is the same as the previous scheme. Then we move on to the top of Party Down Lane, where we have poles, 4-metre poles at the entrance to a footpath, some supplanted fencing, where the fencing here is a bit weak, and then 2 6-metre poles over the roadway. One of the poles, the pole on this side, has got a slightly different location to originally approved. Again, it's to try and avoid and minimise any damage to wildlife. This is the footpath, which will have a 3-metre span over it. This is the fencing that will be replaced or repaired. Existing fencing. This is the type of fencing that we'll be using here. It's not the black fencing, it is the cattle stock-proof fencing, and this is an example taken from the stand area, which obviously is existing at the moment. And these are the pole positions, 6-metre poles spanning the road. Then site 13, which is at the junction of Bray Road and Bittersea Hill. Again, 3 6-metre poles over the road. This is a slight change from the originally approved scheme, which had this pole located in this location. It's now being moved here. So it's on the corner of the house here rather than here. That would be 1 pole location, the 2nd pole and the 3rd pole. Sites 14 and 15 are on Mill Hill, outside Mill Hill Depot and the Bittersea Business Centre, and they've got no change to the previous. So 3 poles here outside the entrance and exit to the Mill Hill Depot, 2 poles down here at the entrance to the Bittersea Business Park. Now obviously the idea is to construct the area fairly soon. This boundary here may well need to change once the development of Mill Hill East has happened, and the boundary features may well change, so there may well be some amendments made in years to come to this part of the area boundary. That shows the photographs of the 2 of the poles there. 2 poles by the business park. Site 16. The majority of the poles we're looking at now are all near on Buns Lane and the motorway and the underpasses. These are some leppy, which are actually near junction 2 of the M1, near Hilltop Gardens over here. Again, they're just going to be panels and poles in the central reservation. Sites 17, there's a number of sites here relating to the footway under the railway and the M1 bridge from Graham Park Way, various fencing repairs and leppies underneath bridges. I'll just speed through these. That's the bridge where we'll have some leppy. Mesh fencing to supplant this existing fencing where it needs repair. More fencing on, this is all on Buns Lane, leppy under the bridge. And the final site, site 18, which has not been changed since the previous, is in Buns Lane near the Anchor Court and Lanning Park here. There's 2 6-metre poles spanning the road. And these are the indicative photographs here, the Anchor Court and next to Lanning Park here. Right, before we have any item up for discussion, I think we have speakers.
Mr. and Mrs. Cookstein as supporters, and Mrs. Ristori Steeple as an objector. Are any of them here? Okay, so discussion. Councillor Marshall.
Well, Madam Chairman, the first time I heard of an Eruv was in 1992. Public inquiries and other things since then, Hampstead suburb eventually got its Eruv, and it's certainly as beautiful a conservation area as Mill Hill, and many of us would say it was even better, but I'd better not annoy the audience by emphasising that, or you, because you live in Mill Hill. However, what is interesting is that all the dread things that people said would happen once the Eruv had come in didn't happen. And what I do know is that living as I do in an Eruv, one does notice how one's neighbours are able to benefit from it. My immediate neighbour has a child of about 15 months, and they're able to take him to go and have lunch with his grandparents every Saturday. And that seems to be to emphasise how an Eruv does widen the opportunities facing a family, and therefore it should be commended. And I did notice, in fact, that most of the comments in this report were against the principle of an Eruv rather than against these particular applications, which refer to a planning application where the principle has been accepted. So therefore most of these comments are redundant, and it was a waste of a 44p stamp sending them. People should think of Oxfam or some other charity rather than sending silly letters.
Well, I quite agree with you, Councillor Marshall. I mean, that the whole principle, basically, of the Eruv is that it helps a lot of people and is of absolutely no consequence or concern to the people that don't need it, or unaffected, or of other religions. It makes absolutely no difference to anybody who doesn't need it for their own religious purposes. But for those that do, well, you've said it all, so there's no point in repeating this. Councillor Renner.
I agree with everything that you have said, Madam Chairman. I take issue at Councillor Marshall. If people do feel strongly about something, then I see no reason why they shouldn't put it in writing, especially if they're paying for the 44p stamp themselves. Whether you agree with them or not, and personally I don't, but whether you agree with them or not, I think they have the perfect right to do so, and I encourage participation in whatever form.
Anybody else have anything?
Brief,
Well,
I want an argument.
you joined us one.
You just created one.
Well, can I have it outside you two after the meeting? Because I'd like to take a vote on it, please. All those in favour of the changes to the polls, please show. Against, voting, fine, down.